Good afternoon and welcome. This is the Marion City Council work session for Tuesday, January 16th. There's nothing marked for discussion on the finance section, but does anyone have any questions on the finance section that we need to go over before we move on? Okay, public service.
Thank you, Your Honor. Item number 2 is the first one started under public service. This is approving payment to Rachi Construction for the Eco-Industrial Park grading project. Rachi has finished up the project per specifications that we laid out. I want to give council an update. We did begin utility installations late in December while the weather was good. Since we got the cold weather, we have delayed that. We're hoping in the next 3 to 4 weeks we'll get back on the project, get the utilities installed, most notably the natural gas. That's kind of linchpin for the project out there at phase 1. So we are recommending approval of the project payment. Estimated we moved about 40,000 cubic yards of soil in order to prep the site. That, if you've been out there, you can see the amounts of soil that we had to move. Site is ready to go for utilities, and then after that we'll be back to the council to discuss when the phasing of the rest of the project will take place.
And so what is the next step? Is that the facility?
Yes, sir. And so we're currently working with the architects, Dorsey and Whitney, for the financial part. We're going to put all that package together, come back to council, and get as much information in front of you as that we can. In the meantime, we are working in the background to get the utilities in, natural gas, water, things like that. So our goal is to have something back to council in February, something hard, a little bit harder. And that will include the plans, floor plans, facility plans for council review.
So. Just so we can be thinking about it. What is the timeline? When do you foresee starting the construction on the facility?
Our next step is to select what we call a construction manager. As you know, we went out for an SOQ process here. We went through that. We're hoping to complete selections again in February. As soon as the weather breaks, we'll be in a position to go as the council would like to. We can go as fast or as slow. We want to make sure the council is going to be comfortable with this project before we go. At any case, we'll be ready to go for footings if the council wants to this spring. So we're that far into construction. Yeah, we're pretty good into design phase, but we got a few things we want to finish up, a few little things that we need to tweak on the design. So, yep.
Okay. Questions?
I think my only question is, after I was looking at the memory stick with all of the voluminous amount of information.
Yes.
No, I got through what I think was important. I may get together with you just to catch up on what has been
all the new council members.
Yes.
There's a lot of background with this, and then we're working to disseminate that information to where people can understand it, I guess, grasp it. Again, the whole objective of phase 1 is to provide the facilities and infrastructure that we need for public service for our maintenance facility. The goal is to provide enough cost savings to offset the debt service that we would have with that facility. So
I was looking for an executive summary and timeline, and I didn't see necessarily either one of those in
we'll
there.
We'll get into that. We had a timeline, we really did, but you wouldn't believe the obstacles and hurdles we had to go through this. Just recently,
okay.
We had to change the delivery package. We had some issues we had to contend with some outside legal issues that weren't happy with how the service delivery model was coming together. But since then, we've really tightened everything up. We're pretty comfortable right now. So,
other questions? Okay.
Excellent. Item number 3, this is to receive and file correspondence from the City of Cedar Rapids regarding wastewater treatment fees. You have that, and that letter indicated that our fees would be going down, roughly about $40,000 per month. That's due to the increased industrial monitoring that we are having with the City of Cedar Rapids. Now, this is something I want to go over with the council. If you can see this, these are our fees currently. Right now, we're about at $249,617 per month. That's what we pay the City of Cedar Rapids for wastewater treatment services. Now, if we do not get to the point with the new agreement this year, our fees will be reduced to $208,602. Okay, That's based on our current agreement from 1979. If we cannot come to an agreement this next year, our fees will go down to this. If we do come to terms with an agreement, and staff just met with Cedar Rapids, all of us met with Cedar Rapids yesterday here at City Hall, they have indicated that the agreement is within their attorney's hands. Everything looks good. They're just looking to do a review and then get it back to Marion staff. Our agreement would go back up to 247,107. Okay? The reason of that is that this number here, this first column, this is what we call operation maintenance fees. Okay? So our fees will go down under a flow-based agreement. We'll go down to $137.99. Okay? So those are the fees we pay Cedar Rapids every year for what we call O&M treatment charges. The caveat of that is that we have to buy capacity in the plant. Okay? Right now we own roughly 34,000 populace and capacity in the plant. We need to purchase capacity, and that's how that's broken out, that monthly fee. And that's what brings it up to 247,107. That's if we get a new agreement. Okay? We have not gotten an agreement back yet, but when we do, we'll go into detail with it. Year 2021, this is when we'll see our fees go down, because we're catching up on capacity here. Our own O&M fees will go up a little bit, but then our total treatment charges will come back down to 196, 266. Okay. I know that's kind of back and forth, but that's how it's going to look here this next year. So our fees, our treatment fees, no matter what, from this date this year, 249,617, they're not going to go up. They're going to go down. It's just a matter of when. Okay? So it's very complex how that agreement's put together. We'll go into it in much more detail. We'll get that information to the council way beforehand. If there's any questions, let me know or get Juan. We'll try to answer them.
I assume you and other staff members feel that this is a fair agreement now, or?
It's about as fair as we're going to see.
Okay.
We looked at so many avenues, so many alternatives at this point.
Is there still that capital improvement charge involved?
There's a capacity charge. There's not a capital improvement
But the
charge.
original agreement that we got, didn't it have some sort of a capital
Correct. If you
improvement?
remember the information they got us.
Like $9 million or something like that?
No.
That's
that went
gone?
away. That's gone.
Okay.
That is gone. So what we were looking at is this fee in lieu of this. Our O&M charge is going to go down to where they need to be. By rights, we did agree in the 1979 agreement to buy capacity or buy additional capacity as our population increases. Okay? And so, in all fairness, we're doing that. Another thing that we're doing is that treatment parameters have changed. In 1979, the water didn't have to be as clean. These days, it has to be much cleaner, so we have to pay a little bit higher fee to get it cleaner. We'll go into more detail with that. But as the agreement looks right now, both legal counsel staff, it's would we like to see a better agreement? Absolutely. But this will open up the doors for us to seek alternatives as well.
Okay.
One thing I do want to note to the council, our current fees, sanitary sewer fees, this is how we stack up with comparable cities. And we'll go over this information in more detail. But Marion is right here. About the only other city that would compete with us is Urbandale. Other than that, we have probably the lowest fee structure in regards to sanitary sewer rates. Okay. This is good to see, good to share. But that's how we stack up with everybody else around the state, comparable cities in size. Now I can pull out other cities. This is based on a survey that the city Ames does every year. But that's how we compare. So we're very, very aggressive, very, very competitive in rates, I feel. If the council would like any of this information, it's going to be available. We're still putting all this information together, but that's kind of how our rates stack up. So we're not out of line. One thing that we do want to look at least the Public Services Board would like to look at, we've talked about this in the past. This has to do with some of the rate disparities we're seeing right now. Single-family homes and multifamily homes. Right now, the single-family home, based on our rates, the single-family home will pay much more per month for the same amount of use as a multifamily home. The reason being is that service charge, because we bill them per meter. And so one of the things we would like to look at, or at least have that discussion with council, is going to more of a flow-based use agreement. If we're going to a flow-based agreement for treatment fees with Cedar Rapids, we would like to reflect that in our rates. So if we had one basic flow rate, I'm not recommending that we're going to do this. This is just to illustrate it. We can put everybody on an equal plane. Okay. So that's one thing that my board has asked me to explore, to come back with council with that. With that would allow us to, I guess, adjust rates more accordingly and more on a fair basis. So I just want to give the council an opportunity to discuss that.
So where in the process is the agreement with Cedar Rapids?
It's under legal review with their city attorney.
So is there
Other
anything
than
at this
that,
point
it
that
is
would
done.
hold it up?
It is done. If council would like a copy of the draft agreement, I'd be happy to provide it, but right now it is a draft form.
It has been approved by our staff, by you and Lon
It's
and our
been
staff?
approved by our legal counsel, staff, our board has seen it, but if Cedar Rapids makes any changes to it, we want it to come back and share it with the council.
Okay, so,
We got a few steps to go yet, but all in all, it's a pretty straightforward agreement. There's not a lot of wiggle room in it. Not very complex.
and that's been a lot of work in a long time, so thanks for all your work on it. Yep.
Okay.
Ryan, I have a quick question. On this capacity that we're being charged for, is
Right.
that on a forecasted usage or?
No, that's flat-based capacity charge. And I
Okay.
can break it down for you.
No, I was just
Yeah.
curious for clarification on my part, because I was just curious to see that usage, because as obviously we have some of the things come online here for new construction. You
Yep.
know, we got a lot of long-term care facilities,
That's another
multi-homes.
thing we're gonna have to look at, and talking to Lon, and not right away, but the people within the city of Marion are paying for that capacity, okay? Something we may have to look in the future, I'm not saying to do this, but when you put that lot in, or when that big development comes in, you're increasing that capacity, so I think the question needs to be raised, that who should pay for that? Should it be all of the homeowners or all of the dwelling owners within the city, or is it within that development, or is it who should pay for that? That's another thing that's going to come up when we look at these rates.
Sure. Okay,
It
perfect.
just has to be fair.
Yep, thank you.
The capacity charges, I'll break those down once we get the agreement. Let's make sure this agreement's going to go forward. But it's based upon what we bought in the past with an adjusted rate factor, and we'll get into that. There's really no hidden cost. There was at first. I don't know if you remember that. We
Yep, I do.
had a huge bill there, but now we've got it dialed way back to where it's
Right. You know,
consistent.
obviously, we've got hotels, we've got a lot of
Yep.
multi-flushes coming up that obviously are going to be a huge factor in that going forward, so
Yes.
I was just curious.
Yep. There's going to be a lot of things to consider when that agreement goes forward.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Other questions for Ryan on this?
The only thing I would point out, Randy, is that one of the things that this agreement gives us the ability to do is it actually provides an incentive for those high users to make decisions to help moderate their usage. Because now, especially when we restructure our rates, there would be a reward to them for producing less flow. Under our old agreement with Cedar Rapids, flow didn't matter. It was all based on population. So there wasn't any incentive for us to do anything, even though Marion's been really aggressive on reducing intrusions into the system. It provides an incentive for us to continue to do that, but also look at alternative methods of treatment.
Yeah.
I would think as well, too, I want to piggyback on that as obviously the developers or the generals that are looking at those, you know, there's a lot of appliances that are going to help in the water usage in those as well, too. So I would hope that would be an incentive to help them, you know, reduce those gallons of water, you know, per flush, you know, everything from dishwashers to, you know, daily water usage. So obviously it's a big concern, and hopefully it works out well for everybody.
Yep.
So
Lon brought up a good point. Our I&I, that's inflow and infiltration, that's really our true cost monthly. It really is. I mean, that's how aggressive we are in Marion. We have a pretty good system. We're aggressive with it. We want to address more. but actually that's our O&M fee. If we had our capacity, if we paid for the population up to this point, let's say we had some type of connect fee already in place, we didn't have to buy additional capacity. I mean, that's a pretty good rate for us to look at, and we'll get back up there. I mean, we'll catch back up, but
It's nice to see where we're at too by comparison
also
to
where we're
sister
going.
cities.
Yeah, and so we're getting there. Just a few more hurdles.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, great, thank you.
thank you, sir.
Thanks, Ryan. Keith?
Good afternoon, Council, Mayor. Bring your attention the Marion, Iowa feasibility study for 911 and PSAP consolidation. The copy that I just gave you is the final draft that will be presented at several working sessions next week. Next Monday and Tuesday, there will be working sessions with some key stakeholders. With the persons and the company that did the study will be coming here to address key stakeholders to answer questions about the study. One thing I do want to stress to council is that probably during my tenure here as the police chief in Marion, this will be the #1 public safety issue that I deal with in my career here. And it is, in my opinion, the #1 public safety priority, in my opinion, for the city of Marion to do something about this. We need to create a system that's more efficient in processing calls, dispatching calls, and I think I can speak for the fire chief. The way that we've been doing things has got us by. But it's time for us to move ahead with a better system, a better process, and in my personal opinion, that's going to be a consolidated model where we farm 911 calls into an integrated center, and then they are transferred to the dispatching entities in a singular center. There'll be a lot more discussion on that, but I just wanted to express my concern in this topic and the support that I'm going to ask for you in the coming months and years. So. Second thing that I want to discuss, it really comes down to policing 101, but it's a big step for us here in Marion. Let's see, how focus that at all, so I'm just going to leave that alone. You all have copies of it. Historically, the way that Marion police officers have been deployed once they leave the station is they'll have a roll call, and the sergeant will say, you guys work north and you guys work south. And when we began to look at our discussions on how to deploy our resources, we engaged the University of Iowa through a partnership we have, and they began to model our calls, modeling our response times, and modeling our geographic area. And from that, they helped us develop a beat structure that will work in concert with a new radio number system for the Marion Police Department. We'll talk about radio numbers briefly. When you get hired by the police department, for example, we just hired Tyler. Okay, he's the 200th officer that we've hired in this numbering system. So his radio number will be 200. Conversely, Deputy Chief Slagle, his radio number is 132. When you have a beat structure or you have accountability for geographic locations in a city, and when you have calls for service that need to be dispatched to certain parts of the city, it's very important that you tie your geographic numbers to the radio numbers that are responding to that area. It comes down to ownership of the area for the officers that work the area, better efficiency for the dispatch of the calls for service to those areas. And so to really just drill it down is Marion got divided in half again, but it wasn't on 7th Street north and south. It was basically diagonally. And to distribute the workload, we established 2 beats, the 510 and the 520 sectors of Marion. Okay, the 510 will signify a sergeant of each sector. So 510 and 520 are supervisors. The officers that work for that supervisor in that area will be 511, 512, 513, 524, 525, and 526. So, for example, if I have a problem on the night shift at 2 o'clock in the morning, okay, I can then go to the night commander. He's radio 501, and I can say, tell 10 Sector Sergeant that he's got a problem in 511's area with vehicle thefts overnight, and I want something done proactively. So I can go to that lieutenant, he can go to that sergeant, who then can assign it to that officer to develop a plan and then begin to communicate with the citizenry, or to take some type of ownership in developing a plan and providing a feedback loop to the command staff of the department to address the problem. So really, this isn't going to cost us anything, but it's a plan, and it's a modeling strategy for us to triage calls for service, to deploy our officers more efficiently, and to have a radio number structuring that we know who's getting the call first. It's 511. And if I look at the computer screen and I see I've got 503, 510, 511, and 524, I can look at the screen and know I got a lieutenant, a sergeant, and 2 officers on the scene. Does that make sense? And instead of just random numbers that are on the screens as we have it, I can see what kind of staff I have there from a command perspective. And it really lets everybody know how we're deploying, what's going on, and moving forward, we'll be able to draw better criminal analytics from the beats and the officers. So just an informational thing for y'all. Any questions?
Questions?
Yeah, so just looking at the way the map's broken down, is this by population? Because some sections look bigger than others.
It's based on call for service workload.
Okay.
Call for service. And what they did is they built this algorithm. I actually got to see them implement it once. They take all the call for service workload and the geo coordinates for all those calls, and then the computer begins to eat landmass until it begins to, one beat's trying to eat, the landmass and the call for service workload, and that's what it showed us. And I was actually really, really happy with the beats I saw. So if you look at them, you got 511's area. You're going to have Linn-Mar High School. You'll have the high density housing up off Azure up there. 512's area, you've got a large residential area. 513's area, you've got Walmart, you've got a couple of trailer courts. 526 there, you've got industrial, you've got a trailer court, you've got Hy-Vee, you've got the east side of the corridor heading out of town. 525's area, you've got very dense population housing. You also have uptown. And then 524, you can see it's very much a small area, less population over there, but it's definitely a more economic portion of the town with the mall and all the businesses over there on that side of town with the higher call for service workload. So.
And how frequently would you then check that this is still meeting the needs of the calls?
Every 3 to 5 years would be optimal. I would probably want to, it was pretty expensive for us to look at this with our partnership with U of I, but it would be something that we could definitely, I would encourage us to revisit with the growth of Marion, because it's definitely going to change when we get hotels and different things that pop up that draw a different call for service workload.
And then I noticed, I think that the numbers just went into effect like this week or last week, but it doesn't come out until April.
So what we did
right?
is we didn't want to make a wholesale change all at the same time. So the only radio numbers that initially changed was the commanders and the sergeants. The officers retained their radio numbers so they can begin to hear the new radio numbers. But the beat deployments and the new radio numbers will go into full effect April 1st after the new shift bid.
And then my last question is, how is this received, this change in the department?
Very, very much welcomed.
Okay.
I think they're ready for this type of deployment. They're ready for the ownership. And I think from a command perspective, it'll make my job easier. I think, the guy that draws 513 as a car, when he's going to be responsible for some of the tough, it's tough working in an area that has a Walmart in it. Just because of the calls for service that are associated with that, it's not fun. You're going to be going a lot of shoplifters, a lot of things that, just aren't necessarily fun, but you need to be responsible for that area. So.
But then you can establish that rapport, kind of like the SROs.
Yeah, you can get to know the business
Build
owners
more
better. Yeah, and whoever's in 25's car, we can engage more with the uptown business community. Whoever's in 511's area, I can have them get to know the schools. Linn-Mar High School, get to know and so it's not Tommy Dobbs up there by himself anymore. It comes down to ownership and engagement with this community 101. When you're responsible for an area and you don't know the people in that area, and I find that out, I'm not going to be a happy chief.
Yeah.
So clarify 2 things for me, Chief. So if you look at beat 512 compared to 526, just by the geographical size, you're saying that beat 526 has 2 to 3 times more calls than 512.
And they should have the same amount of calls.
Oh, same amount.
They should the workload should be evenly distributed in these
Same amount of
beats.
calls, just spread out over a larger geographical region.
And for example, the
Oh, I see.
workload from 511 should be the same as 524s.
Okay.
But the north side of 511s, they're not exactly calling the police every day. But when you look at 524s and why it's so small is because of the amount of calls that are there, and that the workload is greater in the more concentrated area. In Kansas City, there's some beats that are 6 blocks by 10 blocks, but there's also beats that are 25 square miles. But it's the same call for service workload.
And the officers who start in a beat, they stay in that beat so that they can build up those relationships that you're referring to, that you want to build on.
And it really comes down to sector integrity. If I'm in 511's area and there's nothing going on, we want you to be in that area, proactively policing that area. But realistically is if 512 gets a call, 511 is going to be the backup for 512. Does
Right.
that make sense? And if something happens in Marion, we all go. But, big. So it's not like we're not going to leave that area. It's just depending on workload, and it's trying to distribute us for a better response time, and so we can account for where that way the community's getting policed equally.
Chief, will this change our minimum staffing then on an overnight schedule?
It will not.
Chief, I see the number, Sergeant. Where does this put our corporals?
The corporals are currently we have 5
Okay,
corporals.
I'm looking at the back of this.
Oh,
Looks like we have a lot of sergeants there, but,
yeah, so I don't have the corporals or the officers in there yet.
okay.
But the corporals would just fit into a beat car.
Okay.
They would assume whatever radio number the sergeant assigned them. I anticipate, to really get with your question, I anticipate keeping 3 to 5 corporals. I think the corporal role is going to be that of an acting sergeant for me moving forward, rather than just, here you go, you're a corporal. I'm going to get some leadership out of that position. And so it's one that I'm scrutinizing that position pretty heavily.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
Thank you.
Is that you, Chief?
Yes, Your Honor. I didn't really submit anything into your packet because this is kind of an emergency situation. We had 2 of our cardiac monitors go belly up. We only have 4, and we have 4 responding medical vehicles. So we have 2 that aren't working right now. Right now we have AEDs in them, which is an automatic defibrillator that can be used by paramedics, but we can't see a cardiac rhythm in order to give them certain drugs and those kind of things. Unfortunately, it got missed in the asset replacement. It was supposed to be replaced this year, actually. All 4 monitors were supposed to be replaced, but it got missed, and so now we're in real need of them. And it looks like the bid that we got is going to be less than this amount. The bid looks to be about $115,000 right now. So that's good news because we're buying them all 4 at the same time, of course. They all do need to be standard. They all need to be alike. So that's why we need to replace all 4. So that's where we're at with that. And according to finance, the money should be there because it is out of asset replacement.
But it's not currently in the budget, though?
No.
So do we have to amend the budget to do that? Yeah. But it was...
It was planned for.
It should have been in the budget. It should have
Yes.
been
Exactly.
put in there. Okay. Questions on that?
What do we do with the 2 that don't match but still work? What happens to those?
We actually get trade-in value.
Oh, good. Okay. So the 115 will actually be less?
And they're actually going to give trade-in value for the 2 that don't work anymore, so.
So does that come off the 115, or is that why it's 115?
That's part of the reason why it's 115, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Those are pretty important, Mayor.
Yes. We'll call it the Paul Draper ordinance here, or resolution.
Oh.
Okay. Playground.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi, Mike.
Just on the agenda, had on there to kind of have a discussion and update related to the Lau Park South End Development Project, which consists of a couple phases. One phase that we did in a previous year, now the next one that we'll be headed into this next construction season. First, I wanted to kind of a little bit on history for new council members, and that's that back in 2011, we updated the master plan for Lau Park. The driver for that was really the amphitheater project, and we really needed to look at the whole park and conceptually what we would do in future years and phases of Lau Park. So with that, in the south part of the park, as you came in, what was going to be that future south entrance, which is now Irish Drive, was for a neighborhood playground area within that portion of the park, and then additional parking in that southern section of the park also. So that kind of is, gets us to what was the first phase of the project. In this slide, we're showing the 200 stall parking lot to the west over by the ball fields that we constructed a year ago. The 10-foot pathway that goes from that 200 stall parking lot up to the trail that goes around the amphitheater, and then the roadway, of course, that comes in off of Irish Drive into the park. The red boxed area, that is the project area that we'll be talking about today. North of that red box, between the new parking lot and then up to the amphitheater, basically we did 25 acres prairie pollinators also last year as part of our 1,000-acre pollinator project with Lynn County and Cedar Rapids and the Monarch Research Project. Project funding, total project funding for these two phases, a little over $1.6 million. Of that, the phase one expenditures were right at just roughly really close to $877,000 for that first phase. The first phase of the park with the parking lots, we did run about $100,000 over what we had anticipated for that budget. And that was due to soil conditions that we ran into, very wet soil conditions. We had to do a lot of coring and stabilize the ground associated with the parking lot project. So we did go over a little bit of what we had estimated on that first phase for the parking lots. So phase two, the funding balance currently is at $786,561 in place today. The next slide I have kind of gives us a view of the project, kind of looking from the west to the east, kind of gives a pretty good conceptual idea of the lay of the land and what we're trying to do in this phase of construction. So you can see in that photo coming in off of Irish Drive and then the 20-stall parking lot to the north of the project area that we constructed in a previous year, and then pavilion, restroom, playground area, and then open play space. Here's another photo of that same area. Looking down, the blue area would be where the playground would go. Adjacent to that, again, just open play, which we want to provide for the pavilion to the east, and then the restroom closer to the roadway on the west side of the project. Here's what we've come up with for the restroom design. We tried to pull some of the architectural elements of the existing A&E building into the design. If you look at the front of the A&E building with the steeper pitch roof lines in it, the stone around the building, and just trying to make somewhat, if you will, bookends that you have the A&E building on one side of the park on that main entrance, and then our southerly entrance into the park, we'd have the other bookend. So that's, the restroom is designed with, currently with men's and women restrooms, then one family restroom in the design. On the front of the restroom, we would have drinking fountain, and then hand wash station on the outside of the restroom. That was something that, as we went through a few years ago and we did our master park planning project, within that and with the public input was to provide for hand wash stations, those type of things on the outside of our restrooms versus making a family or a small child go all the way into the restroom to wash their hands. That way a parent can be outside around the playground area. They can go over, wash their hands, get a drink of water, and actually don't physically have to go into the restroom. So that was an element within design that we wanted to provide for. Then here is our conceptual design of what we're working on for the pavilion. Again, trying to follow that same roof line as the A&E building, pull that into it. This pavilion roughly is about 30 by 34 foot, would accommodate somewhere between that 70 to 100 people for usage for that. And again, open aired, it would have electrical, those type of things. No water service associated with that. You would go over and use the restrooms area for that type of activity. Then here's our first conceptual design for the playground itself. Just a little bit about the design. We're doing an inclusive playground as part of this project. Inclusive basically means that we're providing a playground for all disabilities. Whether it's an adult in a wheelchair, a child in a wheelchair, someone with autism, we provide elements within the playground design for all disabilities. It could be a father that's in a wheelchair that has never had the opportunity to actually interact with their children on a playground setting. What an inclusive design will do will allow for that activity. So really excited about bringing an inclusive playground into the city. This is, we started out with reaching out to our playground vendors, asking them to submit a design to us. We had about 6. We've narrowed it down to 2. Of the 2, this one is from Fry and Associates. There's roughly 35 elements within this design to play for play, and it also includes 3 sunshades associated in the design. It's one of the things that we wanted to bring into the playground area. We're going to be somewhat starved of shade for several years, just because of the way we graded out there, and there were no trees existing on the site. So we want to provide for additional shade until the tree canopy starts to grow out there. So we did ask for that within the playground design. The next one that we have is our second one that made the cut. This one is from Outdoor Recreation. They have about the same amount of elements to it. I think theirs is 39, but they're only providing 1 shade within their conceptual design. So next step for the playground area, I'll just back up a minute. We did have an open house last Tuesday to gather public input as far as the project and design, and we received some comments from the public associated with that open house. So we harvest that information. We'll go back to the park board now with these 2 designs, and we'll look at overall design, input from the public. We'll look at the cost of the 2 proposals, and from there we'll make the selection of what vendor that we'll move forward with for the playground part of the project. and bring them on board as part of the team for final design. The next slide I have is just kind of design of the entranceway into the park. This is Irish Drive at West Williams. At Irish Drive in West Williams, we were able to acquire over-width right-of-way in the parking area, the right-of-way from Todd Frazier, who was the developer in the area. Todd allowed for that extra right-of-way so we could do a beautification and also be able to create this gateway into the park and try to do it in as much with natural elements as we could. So most in the planting beds that you'll see, we're going to try to use mostly perennial plants. We'll have a little bit of a mix of annual to give some color, but the majority of the plants in those beds will be perennials, and we'll gear those towards pollinator prairie-type plants in those areas as we come into the park. Then as you get a little past West Williams, and then as you start to enter the park, we increase and start providing some tree canopy into the area of the park as you enter before you get to the trail. Everything that we're doing associated with the landscaping as we're coming into that park is try as much as we can naturally to calm the traffic as you enter into the park on the south side before you get to the trail crossing. So we think that with the landscape design that we're coming up with, that we'll be able to provide for that calming of traffic as you enter into the park. We have a huge stone that's out there sitting there now that they dug up when they built the house to the west side as you're coming into the park. So we're going to use that as a natural park sign as you enter into the park. Now, whether it stays on that side or moves to the other side of the road is yet to be determined, and yet to be determined whether we even want to try to move it to the other side of the road. So that's kind of what we've come up with conceptually for landscaping as you come into the park. The next slide that I have here, it's actually kind of a fly-through, if you will, of what we think the park overall will look like when we're done with phase 2. So we'll just run through it. I do want to say while that's running through that our consultant on the project, MSA, has done a fantastic job for us up to this point. Working with them has been great. Very forward-thinking in design, so it's been great to have them as part of the project as our consultant and design team as we move through the project phases.
Mike, the surface in the play area, that's not natural surface.
No, it's a rubberized surface that we will have within this design for an inclusive playground.
Okay.
The color palette is yet to be determined a little bit. We haven't landed completely on what the surfacing will look like, and we're going to try to keep as close as we can to natural colors and in that landscape. That was one of the things that we had asked for from the playground vendors as they put their proposals together. So we'll tweak on that when I spoke about getting that playground vendor on board, and then we'll tweak those color palettes and those type of things as they go. So as you can see with that fly-through, looks, what we'll end up end product-wise with the natural plantings, those type of things, the playground, pavilion, restroom, it's going to be a great project in this next phase, and really I believe it'll be a great addition to our park system and Lau Park and to service the neighborhood as it builds out there. And then we get into kind of the detail a little bit here more as far as the project budget overall. So I've got it kind of itemized out. I've got our design engineering fees and then the playground and all the other elements associated with the project broke out. I've included a contingency in there of 10%. Total park improvement right now, the way we have it estimated out, is at little bit north of $800,000, and then with the contingency in there, we push a little over $900,000. I would not be scared of that number right now when you look at what that fund balance looks like. And the reason I say that, this is preliminary design, preliminary numbers that we have. Everyone knows what our budget amount is at this time. So we'll need to go back as we really tweak final design, get into construction documents. We'll pull those numbers down. Another part that we'll look at is what we can do in-house with our staff. A lot of the projects we do, we will do the seeding on, the tree plantings, those type of things. We have grant opportunities associated with tree planting projects. So we'll look at those opportunities that are out there. I've also had discussions with the Park Foundation. The Park Foundation is looking at going out and doing about $150,000 fundraiser specific to the playground itself as part of the project is what they're looking at doing, and they'll launch that fairly soon. They have all of the conceptual drawings, costs associated with it, so they're just about ready to go out and start knocking on some doors for that. So basically, when you look at those numbers, we're at about $136,000 funding gap as is proposed there with the estimated cost right now. So the next steps that we'll be looking at, the playground selection, and then get final design done on the project, and then we'll come back to the council, get that project calendar set for the project. Our hope, and it is a little aggressive, but our hope is that we will be ready to bid the project out late February, early March, is what we're trying to do. And do construction yet this construction year and try to have the project completed before the snow flies next winter. I know that's a little aggressive, but we're still trying to hit that timeline.
Is any of that dependent on the fundraising?
Realistically, the fundraising part of it, we can still move forward with the project. The fundraiser will help us enhance some of the other features if they're successful. We'll just put that back into something else, whether it's amenities within the project. At the end of the day, my plan is that we go as far as we can with the project. Again, we can work the numbers a little bit, and if needed, once we get to where we have the bids in, if for some reason we have a funding gap there, I won't say that I won't come back to talk to this council about that, but I believe that we'll be really close at the end of the day.
But that fund balance, that's money that's existing and
that is money that's in hand right now.
in hand for this project.
For the project.
So, okay. So, yeah, you can go almost all the way.
We're close.
Real close. Okay. All right. Questions?
I have a couple questions, Mike. First of all, I really like the concepts and the conceptual drawings on that. I think it's excellent. It's kind of exciting. Couple of the concerns I have is, do you feel to spend $400 on the pavilion and the restroom, do we feel at all that might be overshot a little bit for what utilization would be if we take the neighborhood out of that from a walkability feasibility concept? We're only providing 20 car spots for parking. Is there any chance that we might be building a little something too big here? I'm just thinking half of the cost of the construction's in those restrooms. If we can only park, 20 cars there, that's a maximum of approximately 80 people at one time. Is it too much?
In my opinion, no, and I'll tell you why. One is that I believe, and I show it on this detail, that we will probably be looking at adding another 20 stalls eventually to the other side of this 20-stall parking lot. The second part of that is just to the north and the west. We have a 200-stall parking lot there, which will be utilized not only by our park users. We have 8 baseball fields to the west. We have the school to the north, which also utilizes, we see that activity already today, utilize that area. They will use those restrooms, whether it be for ball games on our facilities, people coming and going from the Oak Ridge School fields over there, or just the general use on the trails. We have a lot of people that use the east side of the park right now as a destination. They come in, walk the full trail system, because we actually have a pretty nice loop out there now. They will utilize those restrooms also. I feel that as we develop and we build out more and more in Lau Park, it's a destination park to come to. And again, I'll refer back a little bit to the master plan that we did. These are the things that the public is requesting that we build out. So that's why I feel that they're one of those things that you do want to build out in design.
Perfect.
That's what the public wants.
And do it right the first time and right size it.
And thank you. I didn't see, I was hoping to see the photograph that would show, encompass those fields and a little bit more into scale to see that those would be utilized.
Yeah, you can just see the very edge of the fields.
And during the process, until we see the other 20 spots, do we see any kind of repercussions of cars parking on some of the side streets there? Are we going to create any issues there with parking with the neighborhood residents?
I don't anticipate that. I really think that just the way that we designed the larger parking lot, and it has full side paths all the way over to the playground area, I just don't see that there would be a reason to just park alongside the road and walk in, unless it was a huge event that we were having at the amphitheater. And then there could be that sporadic where we'd have the overflow parking for that. But
will that canopy, I'm assuming that we're going to allow people to utilize that by reservation. Is there a capacity to that? I would assume not. It's just a covered area, right? There's no walls or...
Yeah, there's no walls to it. We usually try to estimate out what our pavilions can hold. And if you take, for instance, down in Thomas Park, the smaller pavilions, they're around 70 capacity. The one that we call English, which is the bigger one, that's a little over 100. And so this will be very similar in design to those as far as. But again, with extended concrete that goes out the sides, and you can put 200 people in that area if you wanted to. I doubt that happens very often. But
okay, great. Thank you very much.
Go ahead, Paul.
I just wondered, Mike, are those year-round restrooms, either one of them along the trail? No.
We had that discussion as far as year-round and kind of going away to where they will be seasonal. I think what we'll do is we'll use the same model that we use in the other parks, and we'll put a portable out in the wintertime out there. I mean, when you start adding up the additional cost to heat and maintain that restroom throughout the season, that's an additional cost, and the usage will go down in the park in the wintertime. So that's kind of, we made the decision that it would be a seasonal. And seasonal right now for us usually means April up to the first part of November anymore. So it's you're talking that they're closed down for about a 4-month period. And again, Thomas Park, one of our most used regional parks, we winterize that and put the porta pots out in the wintertime, and they seem to do very well.
We might consider running a gas line. There's plenty of room in those buildings for a furnace between the men's and ladies. We might consider just running a gas line in case we...
In the future, you mean if we wanted to?
Yeah.
We definitely can look at that.
Yeah, that's it.
Mike, I had a question about when you first talked about the phase one and the extra 100,000 for grading issues. Was that the 200 spot parking lot and the 20? So do you anticipate grading issues when you guys set the foundation for this park, or is it it's higher elevation?
No, and the reason that I don't anticipate having an issue with that, where this playground project is, that was the borrow pit for the fill for that first phase of the parking lot. So that's already been graded for the most part. There will be minimal grading that we'll need to do as part of this phase, but we've already been into those subsoils, if you will. And just the drainage area to where the parking lot was over there just had some challenges that we didn't foresee until we got into the project. But so I don't really see a challenge with this with the subgrades in this area that we saw in the other one.
Okay, thanks.
Mike, one last question.
Sure.
Did you say there are sidewalks between the playground and the 200 parking lot area?
Yes, there's side paths.
There are now?
Yeah,
Okay.
they're there now, yes.
Okay.
That was part of the first phase.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Other questions?
Terrific.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. So there's nothing to be voted on at this point? We're not voting on Thursday?
No, we'll
This
bring,
was just
the
informational.
next thing for council will be when we get that project calendar put together, and that'll come back to
Okay.
council and set everything up
Thank you,
for
Mike.
that.
All right. Mr. Barkalow.
Yeah, we used to pushing buttons.
Oh, yeah, right. Free to open that too.
Boy. About everything on the engineering agenda is starred today.
Mike show.
Yeah.
So item one is just payments. If there's, unless there's questions on those, they're not starred, but. All right, item two, I'm going into more detail on item two than I normally would, just because a lot of this was done with the past council, and just to get everybody up to speed. So in your council packet, there is this exhibit to kind of show you what the scope of the project is. So this is 35th Street. There's that color crosswalk where the railroad used to be that we installed quite some time ago. And so this is actually the path of the new trail. This is Rachi's shop at 44th. So it keeps going behind, there's a pedestrian bridge that actually gets built over Squaw Creek, and it continues all the way to the box culvert that we built under Highway 13 a couple of years ago. And then Lynn County Conservation then has additional trails that they're building farther to the east, and Waldo's Rock Park is right over here, a little ways off the page as well. So this is a nice connection. This is called the Grantwood Trail. We have a separate project that's actually going to take the project farther to the west, and we have some wetland mitigation as part of this project. That'll be another one that you guys see. So this was let to the DOT, and when we got those numbers, you guys didn't actually have them. All you had was the totals. So basically, there's an engineer's estimate of $961, $680 and 50 cents. No, that's Rachi's bid. So Rachi's bid was 92.17% of 886, 365.28. So that was the actual bid. But that way you guys can see each item, what it costs, what it was estimated. So that's in your council packet. And then I normally don't include this either, but I included the contract that the mayor signs. It's actually the contract between us and Rachi, and then the FHWA or the DOT actually concurs with that contract at all as well. So I'm just giving you guys additional information just to get the new council up to date on it. Normally this would be 2 sentences. It would just be the last 2 sentences of staff recommends approving the contract and bond, because we've already had a public hearing. We've already accepted the numbers, but just to keep everybody up to date on what's going on. So are there any questions about this project?
What's the timeline?
So it starts April 16th is the late start date, which means the contractor has to start by that date, but they could start before that. There's some tree clearing that because of the Indiana bat, they have to do that before April. And then because of the high voltage lines, they might want to do some of that substructure work because we'll have to de-energize that SIPCO line. So they're actually the ones that provide power to ITC, which then provides it to Alliant, that then feeds it to your house. And so we might have to de-energize that line in order to get the cranes in there to set that pedestrian bridge. So there is some contingencies in there that they can come in ahead of time, but they have 75 working days to finish the project, and there's $1,000 per day in liquidated damages if they don't finish it on time.
So it won't affect 35th at all, or 30.
It'll
Yeah,
go to
30.
I mean, just a little bit, just where we're
Road itself.
tying into it, because it just the red crosswalk is already in there. So all we're doing is building the ramp and continuing on with it.
That's in that. Isn't your map at the top 31st on the left?
No, this is 35th.
35th.
The portion between 31st and 35th will be a separate project that you
Right.
guys will see
Okay.
coming. Because this is Lynn Co-op.
Okay. Okay.
Good to finally see this happening.
And then where's the wetland mitigation at?
So there's wetlands back here behind Marion Iron. There's actually a boardwalk that we're building to try and mitigate some of that, so we don't have to completely do as much. Basically, it's a tenth of an acre. Once you do it with that, you're kind of at a new level of wetlands. But there's some wetlands in this area, and then just back here, obviously when you build the piers, there's a no-rise certificate, but there's also typically wetlands in there as well.
So that's where the bridge would be.
Yeah, the bridge goes over Squaw Creek, so Rachi's shop is right here.
Okay,
Squaw
okay,
Creek
okay.
is north-south. This is where the pedestrian bridge will
But
go.
there's only going to be the boardwalk on the east
The
side
boardwalk is just a section back here,
of the... Okay.
and that's just so that we don't have to mitigate as many wetlands. When it floods, it'll just go under or over the boardwalk.
Call that the Draper Boardwalk. There's your boardwalk.
Leads to Oswaldo Rock Park.
Uh-huh. Thanks.
Questions on this? Okay.
Yeah, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
I'd like, I'm not kind of slow on thinking here a minute. When he asked about item number 1, I do have a question on 1B that I'd like to satisfy my own mind. I'm one who believes that this consulting group still is going to come back with a recommended roundabout at that location, but my concern is that once Indian Creek is closed, it's going to be such an inconvenience for the people like me who live at Hunters to go out to the roundabout, back down Tower Terrace and pick Indian Creek up. I believe that the traffic count is going to change considerably. And as we do a plan now, what is the accuracy of that? I'm going to get to the roundabout, and I'm going to continue south and go over to 29th and find my way downtown. I'm not going to cut back and pick up Indian Creek off Tower Terrace. And how many people are going to do that?
So those of you that know what we're talking about, it's the 29th Avenue and Indian Creek intersection.
Right.
A lot of that has been pushed by the school to do that study. They're having a lot of issues with getting all the kids across 29th and Indian Creek vehicles. With that, there's an MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization, has done a master transportation study, and we just met with them last week to go over all the transportation changes. So building Tower Terrace, and basically look at 2040 and what is Marion going to look like in 2040. So we showed them the new alignment of Echo Road. We showed them Tower Terrace, the new alignment of Alburnett. There's a lot of things that are changing. And with that, they do a forecast of what they feel is going to occur with that. With that, we also do traffic counts of today. And then we forecast, if there's going to be a Walmart that goes in right there, obviously that changes things. But you use a forecasted model to figure out what you think is going to be in the future. Preliminarily, I can tell you that right now it doesn't meet warrants for a signal, which is what the school is pushing for. We don't want to build something like signals and spend $500,000 if in 3 years, or whatever that time period is, they're no longer needed. And so that's something that they're tasked with doing as well, is making sure that they're taking the future into consideration and not making all these improvements if we don't need to. If, let's say it does say that a roundabout is recommended, but in 5 years, it's not needed, then there's no point in spending that money now if we don't need it in the future, and just keep it as a four-way stop, and maybe we have to do some hybrid signals or something for the kids to get across safer in the interim. So they're looking at the whole scope of the project.
But unquestionably, the car count is going to change on Indian Creek Road.
From today in the future? Absolutely.
From today's usage.
Yep.
If we utilize that today, we can't accurately figure on
We
the
can make a
future of
very
it,
well educated
regardless
guess.
of what the school thinks.
Yeah, we can make a very good educated guess.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right, number 3 is a transfer of jurisdiction. So I included the actual transfer of jurisdiction, but if you guys don't know where this area is based on that map. So here's Highway 13, Dubuque. Here's our police station, Waldo's Rock Park. It is this area in here. And basically, there's a development that's going to come in here and develop, and they built this access road when they improved this intersection because you couldn't access right at the intersection. So the DOT built this frontage road, which is no longer needed, and they're just transferring that to the city of Marion. We also have a request in to do the same thing for this one.
Is it their request or our request?
It's our request for the potential for the development to occur in there. They can't transfer the jurisdiction very well to a private. They can transfer it to us, though.
Does Baxter own that right away to the north? On that bottom one you just showed, where the campers are stored in there?
I'm not sure who owns that.
Is that his, did that road disappear? It used to be a right of way in there.
It's a right-of-way right now.
There is a right of way,
Yeah.
okay.
Mike, when you say transfer jurisdiction, are we actually talking about them deeding the land
Yes.
to us? Okay.
Yep. So it's twofold. So a lot of this, like Highway 13, we have joint jurisdiction. Like, we can't just go in and change the speed limit. We have to request them to change the speed limit.
Yeah.
But they also want it to go through city council when they do that. So it's called joint jurisdiction. Here what they're doing is they're giving up their jurisdiction and handing it over to us, but they're also in that agreement deeding over the property to us as well.
Okay. Just want to be clear about that.
So will we keep that as a frontage road once everything's
Eventually
built out?
it'll be upgraded when it develops.
Okay.
Yep. Those of you that don't know, there's possibility of a quick star and some development occurring over here.
So it'll be a frontage road to get to the parcel to the west there.
Yeah,
Still.
similar to how it is
It'll be
now,
upgraded.
it would be upgraded and brought to city
Still be a
standards.
frontage road type of thing, but yeah.
Mike explained on that one going to that RV park there, you know, that's their only way in and out of that. So when we take that over then, I mean, have we been maintaining that road?
Ryan, have you guys been doing anything for maintenance here?
We only maintain linear. We don't maintain anything off of Highway 13.
And all I've done is do the request, so they might say no. But the only thing that we're doing today is this one.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you
just
said that
mentioned
one was part of it.
We have made a request for it, but that's not on the table today.
Okay.
All right. So that one's been approved, and
That's the agreement
Approving the
giving
agreement.
us that.
Okay.
Yep.
Other
That's where the
questions?
semis are parking now up there. There's always trucks in there.
Is there any dollar amount to that? Or they're just
Just
deeding
deeding
it
is over.
it doesn't cost us anything. So,
It's something that
Yeah.
they don't have to maintain
Future
and
maintenance,
gets it
yeah.
off their books. And,
all right. Are you ready for number 4?
yep, unless there's any questions. So number 4, all it is
Or,
is
just a second, Mike, I'm going to turn over the gavel to Mayor Pro Tem.
Go ahead, Mike.
all right, so item number 4, all we're doing is we're accepting the pavement. Not all the facilities are done out there, but the pavement's in. They want to be able to have Ryan clear the snow. They don't have the equipment to maintain it. So we're not accepting the entire subdivision because it's not all done. What we're only accepting is the street itself, so that it's a public street now. Fire, police can use that street, and public service has to maintain it. And then later in the spring, when they can keep working, they'll finish the subdivision, and then we will accept the entire subdivision and it'll all become ours. This is not uncommon to do.
So the road's completed.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Number 5.
All right, number 5, we'll have a public hearing on Thursday for the sidewalk ramp repair project. With this project, it was several ramps around the city, and this is due to our ADA transition plan, so taking those ramps that there's either no curb or it's dangerous, and actually putting the ramp and the truncated domes in there. So these are the locations that we're doing it. We received 3 bids, and this should have been in your packet. So the engineer's estimate was $99,314. The low bid from Hunt Construction was $92,888.76, which was 93.5% of the engineer's estimate. They're the ones that did the project last year, so we're recommending that they do it. We didn't have any issues with them. Basically, they have to start the project by June 4th. They have 50 working days to complete it, and there's $300 per day if they don't finish it in that time allotment.
Okay, questions on that?
Are these the ones that have those little knobby things too? I don't know what the,
Yeah, they call it truncated domes. It's the pads that you see on the
Yep.
ground.
Okay.
With all the,
they're nice looking.
Well, we're talking sidewalk ramps. I haven't brought it up in a while. The one, that cutout that was done by, was it Imon on First Avenue and 27th Street?
From what I don't, if you're by it, it should be.
Yeah,
fixed.
it's all asphalt, including the curb. Is that,
Oh, I was told it was fixed. I have not gone myself.
they put asphalt in, but they made the curb asphalt also. I don't know if
And
that's.
we've done that before.
Okay, so that's good?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Ryan takes it out with a snowplow, but
Okay.
I want to say it was
I'll keep an
public-
eye on it for you.
I want to say it was public service that actually went out and fixed it before we
Could
got
have
the
been.
contractor.
First Avenue and 27th Street. It's where Imon had cut out. It was Imon, wasn't it?
I'm pretty sure, and we had gotten them to go out and fix it, and you guys showed up, I think, right before and fixed it.
It was.
Yeah, that
it
was utilities.
It was maybe this much out in the
Utilities.
street.
Yep.
There was an old cone sitting in it that was crushed down. An orange cone.
No,
Yeah,
not.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions on this? Number 7.
All right, number 7 is setting a public hearing for February 8th regarding an amendment to access fees regarding ordinance number 1724 regarding access fees to Winslow Road. Basically, there was an error where the same dollar amount was written twice instead of changed the dollar amount, and so we have to go through the whole process again of having a public hearing and 3 readings in order to fix that.
Will it slow us down on anything?
No, this is the section for EXO Middle School, so they may not ever pay it anyways, but we still want to have it correct. The road's already up when we're already using it. It's just an access fee.
So nothing's changing, it's just an error in what was printed.
Right, but in order to fix it correctly, we have to go through the whole process again.
Okay, questions on that? Number 8.
Number 8 is our next local option sales tax project. So this is Northview Drive. So this is from 11th Avenue, or I'm sorry, from 12th Avenue to 17th Avenue, taking the street completely out and reconstructing the street all in one phase. We are adding sidewalk on the west side. We're not doing it on the east side just because it's a little steep to try and get that in there with the existing right-of-way. A lot of water main that we're doing as part of that project. So you can see our preliminary estimate is $616,000. Of that, about 192,000 is just water department, and so they will actually reimburse us for that amount. Sealed bids will be received on February 13th and considered for award on February 22nd. Has a late start date of June 4th with 65 working days and $500 per day in liquidated damages. So we're recommending moving forward with that project.
But currently no sidewalk? Or-
There's no sidewalk on either side.
So we're gonna have sidewalks on one side after this?
Yep.
So that's a
Yep.
improvement, good.
Can you put a map up of it, from where to where?
And then, how's access to the houses taken
During
care of?
construction, they will not have access. They will have to walk to their house. And so we've sent out letters to them all. There's about 4 of them that have some access issues, and we offered to have them stay with relatives, to put them up in a hotel, and they would rather just stay in their location and deal with it.
But it's June.
These
or
are people who have
July.
physical challenges or disabilities or something like
Yeah,
that?
we sent a letter out basically, are you gonna have a problem getting into your house, in or out?
Yeah.
So we do that ahead of time. So there's 4 addresses that we have in the plans that have high priority. So like after they get the street done, those are the first 4 driveways they need to pour back.
Okay.
But we do that ahead of time to try and find that stuff. Unfortunately, in old parts of town, you tend to find some older population that has issues getting around.
Yeah. Okay.
Did you get your bearings?
Hope there's not any big
Yeah.
delays.
Right.
Questions on that one?
That is part of the local option sales tax funding for the
Do you,
neighborhood
when
street.
you do a project like that, do you put a sign up that says local option sales tax? Oh, yes. There you go. Great. No questions? Number 9?
Number 9 is a temporary construction easement. Again, normally we don't bring exhibits of the easements, but to kind of explain this one, for example, the Northview Drive, I think there's like 30 easements that we need to get so that we don't make their driveways too steep with putting that sidewalk in. So I'm not going to bring exhibits of all of them. But this one is a little more important to show you what's going on. Basically, we have a manhole back here. You can see where the street's out here. We need to tear this manhole out and replace it. And so we've actually worked with this property owner to both use the alley that's here and part of his property to get back here and some area to stage equipment. We're pretty much going to tear up his backyard in order to get to that manhole and then have to fix it all. But it's a brick manhole that's falling in. I know Public Services had to go out there before and pump, and it's not fun to try and get back there. So to get a nice solid structure back there, that's why he's willing to do it, and it's not charging us for the easement.
Nice
With
of
that, we wouldn't be able to do the project.
What'd you say for that one?
If we did not have this easement, we would not be able to get back there to do the project.
He's not being compensated for it.
No.
There is an alley there, an active
And a
alley?
nice thank you note.
Yeah, there's an east-west alley that's grass. There's lots of fences back there. It's kind of a cluster.
Okay, questions on that?
Good citizen.
Yeah. Okay, number 10.
So number 10 is then the project calendar for said sanitary project. With that one, I listed the manholes. They're at 11th Avenue and 25th Street, 12th Avenue and 11th Street, 11th Avenue and 11th Street, the east-west alley north of 1990 10th Avenue, which I just showed you, 7th Avenue and 2nd Street. It's actually a 20-foot deep manhole, so fire will be out there watching that, and 10th Avenue and 26th Street. So they're all 6 manholes that are brick manholes that are falling apart that we need to put actual solid structure in so we don't have a vehicle that falls down in them. So we work with Public Service to establish where those needs are. This is half of our project. The other half is that we actually go in and slip line the mains. That'll be a separate project that comes before you guys, but this is just the manholes. So, for this one, the preliminary estimate is $127,550. Bids are due February 13th. Work shall start no later than July 23rd and be done within 35 working days. Liquidated damages in the amount of $300 per day.
Okay. Questions? Comments? All right, thank you, Mike. Good job. Yeah, do we need to rearrange things on the agenda? So we have some patient gentlemen back there.
Yeah, we have a
Would
couple
that
of
be-
items where folks have been waiting, so if it's all right with council, we'd like to move those up ahead of planning and let them get on their way.
Let's do it.
Okay. So the first one would be, it's listed as item number 4 under administration. That's an amendment to the memorandum of understanding that we have with GLD Commercial for the hotel project. Dave Brown is here. We asked him to come in and just provide a little bit of an update on where they're at with the hotel project. But the long and short of it is that everything that we had was based in that agreement was based off of estimates of what the construction costs were going to be. When they started to build the hotel, one of the things that they ran into was a huge demand for materials in all of the post-hurricane reconstruction down in Florida and Texas, and it's really had an impact with the type of stuff that they need. So if you want to go ahead and just do a briefing, Dave.
Just briefly, Beth, just note that I've turned over the gavel to Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, generally things are progressing quite well. We did have some surprises, and we felt we built in relatively liberal, generous contingencies, if you will, with respect to construction costs and so forth, to hopefully avoid having to come back and revisit the discussion. But there were some unforeseen issues that exceeded the contingencies we built in that Lon just mentioned. So with that, I guess that's as simply as we can put it. With respect to the project overall, we're progressing nicely. Most of the foundation and footing work is done or should be completed this week. We did run into a couple of additional surprises. Even with all of the study and work we did ahead of time with both Phase 1 studies, Phase 2 studies, and soil borings, we did run into a surprise with respect to an abandoned rail line that went right through the footprint of the building. So, you can't drill 1,000 holes very practically. We did what we felt was pretty well thought, pretty good due diligence, but that was a surprise both in terms of caused us to stop our schedule, size up the problem, mitigate the problem, so it's just only time and money. But nevertheless, that now is behind us, so we're back on track. We probably lost about a month altogether as a result of the railroad thing and having to try to figure out what to do, so we didn't have a building that moved post-construction. And then the weather kind of fell right on the heels of that, which slowed us down for about a 10-day period. But we're back in business, and you should see all of the important work with respect to the footings, foundations completed this week or at the first of next, and then we'll be well on our way. With respect to the delivery date, our original target date was the end of, or I should say fourth quarter of next year. We're going to be probably a little bit behind on that, but we may be able to make up some time if we have good weather and some breaks. We met with folks with Prospect Meadows this week, and if our schedule is pushed back, probably worst case scenario would be first quarter of next year, and that would tie in nicely what they're telling us is now an ahead of schedule with their openings, and they're hopeful they'll be able to start hosting tournaments, games in March or April of next year. So I think worst case scenario, we should be open and ready for business to accommodate that crowd. So
Great.
And for benefit of the council, when this agreement was first drafted, essentially what the city did was agree to a percentage of participation in the project. So the agreement was written so that we would participate in 36% of actual construction costs. As far as the administration goes, their lender is the one that pays everything off of invoices that are submitted. Copies of that will be submitted to us, and then we will pay 36% off of invoice. So as they go through the project, if it comes in lower than the original cost, we're always at that 36%. We'd be increasing the dollar cap that we'd be able to contribute through the project. The MOU gets those parameters set out, but then there's still the approval process that we have to go through for the actual changes to the development agreement. But this lets them provide some security to their lender that we're in for that piece of it, and then we'll just complete the statutory process and bring that back to council at a later date.
you.
Thank you.
Then the next one we have is a presentation and discussion about the potential reuse of the Squaw Creek Millwork building for a new business. And we'll have Nick Glue come up and do an introduction.
All right, good afternoon, council. Give me 30 seconds as we flip presentations around here. Whose is this? Okay.
Guess while he's doing that,
Of course not. Thank you.
You're going to need that.
Thanks, Steve.
this is what we do. So this is the best we do.
Gonna drink this?
Yeah, we're good. Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Nick Glue, President of Marion Economic Development Corporation. We want to introduce to you a company that has operated in the Cedar Rapids metro area for quite a few years. It's Ecolips, and Steve Shriver, who is president and owner of the company, is here to introduce you a little bit to their company. The site location that we are discussing today is, do you have copies of the packets? Perhaps not. Did they get those distributed? Okay. What you are receiving here today is the application packet that Ecolips has submitted that's been reviewed to the city's economic development team, and moving forward for review and recommendation from the council as we move forward. So Ecolips has been looking for a building to continue to grow for the last several years, and ended up identifying the former Squaw Creek Millwork building as a potential site to really serve as the future home, allowing this company to continue to grow. This is a building, if you're familiar with it, since Squaw Creek Millwork vacated it quite a few years ago, has essentially sat heavily underutilized within the community. It has currently White Glove Movers, operates out of that space, utilizing a very small portion of the building. That company does have a new home that they'll be finding here in the Marion community. We can dig into the project itself in just a few minutes, but I think the most important thing and our intent here today is for you to meet Steve, and he's going to just go through a few slides and give you an opportunity to really understand a little bit about who Ecolips is and what they do as a company. So, Steve.
Thanks. Okay, cool. So, hello everybody. So Ecolips, we make lip balm. We make lots of it. Ecolips has been around since 2003. Prior to that, I founded and ran a company called Raining Rose, and we did contract manufacturing and private label. I saw an opportunity in 2003 to take organic lip balm to retail stores. And so we sold off all of the manufacturing and went off with a very explicit non-compete agreement to not do what they're doing, and we went to launch a retail brand called Ecolips. Over the last several years, we've created 35 different products in the lip care category. To the guys in the room, you can just stop listening now. To the ladies who might understand this a little bit better, we make exfoliating lip scrubs. We've got different tinted lip balms that'll add a nice shimmer to your lips, and we source ingredients from around the world to make those products. We manufacture currently in the Cherry Building. We've got 12,000 square feet. We have some automation. We do a lot of work by hand. We still pride ourselves on handcrafted lip balm. Even though our volumes are getting up there, we're still doing it in relatively small batches. We currently sell to, we're at 14,000 retail stores across the country at this point. These are some that you may or may not have heard of. Just this month, we actually just started shipping to 2,600 Walmart stores as well. So we've got products that sell. Our trajectory over the years has been, it's been pretty substantial growth starting from zero in 2003, but we've never had a down year. So we continue to grow and meet the demands of the customers. One of the things that people like about us is our ethos. So we are a certified B Corporation. that the B stands for benefit. It's not a legal entity in the state of Iowa, but it is, we get audited by a third party out of California to meet the B Corporation criteria. And that criteria focuses on people, planet, and profit. And so when we think about the planet, that's really what our products are about. And you'll see some symbols up here like fair trade, non-GMO verified, USDA organic, wind-powered offsets, those kind of things. That's the planet piece of things. We use a lot of organic raw materials to make our products. The profit piece, we have to make money to spend it. We have to make money to move from Cedar Rapids to Marion, and so you never have enough profit. When it comes to people, I think that's really where we're different. We have a small staff, but we have really great jobs. And so some of our stats here are, let's see here. We have 30 employees, okay? All employees have above average benefits, including flex time, so we don't really, you can just take off for a family matter, family first. Counseling and long-term liability insurance, which are not normal in our industry. They're paid a minimum of 15% over the living wage, so even our lowest paid jobs are paid, I think it's around $12 or $13 an hour at this point. Our goal by the end of this year is to have that up to $15 an hour. They're eligible for a comprehensive bonus program. They're rewarded for carpooling, taking public transportation, bicycling, walking to work, and they're paid for up to 16 hours of volunteer service annually. We have a lot of other things like free coffee and discounts at local restaurants and stuff like that. Our attrition rate for employees is below 2%, and the average tenure is over 3 years, so we don't really see a lot of turnover. We have really quality people that work there, and they stay around. We're a very transparent company, so we actually have full financial transparency in our quarterly meetings with our employees. The only detail that's not shown is the payroll detail, because you can imagine what that would do if people saw that. But we also measure, we have a measurement for lowest wage employee to highest wage employee, and it can't exceed a certain multiple. So we do take that pretty seriously. We do good things every couple of years. We pick a nonprofit to support. So we feel like we're doing our world piece, our natural sustainable piece by focusing on organic ingredients. And then this year we picked Pencils of Promise, and this is an organization that we give 1% of sales to, and that goes towards building schools in underserved, underrepresented populations around the world. So that's it in a nutshell. The sample that you have right there is called Mango Kiss. That is our top-selling product, and we actually discovered this oil called mangango oil over in Zambia, Africa, and we were the first to import it in the United States. We've had it on the shelves for about 5 years now, and that's the current product that's launching into Walmart. Oprah Winfrey mentioned mangango oil about a year ago, and that definitely helped things. But she may not have mentioned it if we didn't, get that first barrel over 5 years ago. So looking forward to being a part of this community. Thank you.
Thanks.
Quick question, Steve. Just out of curiosity, you're going from 12,000, it looks like, to 17,500?
35.
Oh, did I read that?
Yeah.
I'm looking at the second page here.
We might just be...
Oh, it says a total remodel of approximately 17.5.
So the rest is just 25-foot warehouse space.
Sidewall, warehouse space, okay. So you're going from 12,000 to 35,000?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're obviously excited about that.
Yeah, that gives you a lot of room for expansion and growth.
Yeah, so I think, doing the math, it looks like that could be our home for, 15 or 20 years.
Yeah, that's where I was trying to run with that, because if you're going from 12,000 to
right.
17.5, I thought that might seem a little tight because there's not a lot of room for growth on that parcel. But now you've answered my question. You've got a lot of room for growth.
Yep.
All right.
Are you moving your whole operation?
Yep.
Or are you going to keep, okay.
Yep. So there won't be any, the Ecolips world headquarters in Marion, so,
Nice.
yeah. Yep.
So, Steve, you're planning to to double your employees in 3 years, or are some of those part-time jobs?
No, we don't have any part-time workers. We do, we have 30 full-time, and those are the ones that we can commit to year-round. We currently have between 15 and 20 temp employees, and we don't employ a temp for more than 6 months without hiring them. So it's very likely that we're going to hold on to those temps and create, by year end, we'll probably have between 40 and 50 employees. So it'll be easy to hit that number.
Wow.
Yeah, we don't like to let people go unless they're terrible employees, you know.
Yeah.
But we don't want it to be our fault by expanding too quickly.
Is parking an issue out there? I'm trying to visualize where all the parking spots are.
It doesn't look like it. We have, I think if we repaint the stripes, we can fit in a good chunk of probably 70% of our current staff, and then right now, and then there's street parking on the street, and right now, in Nubo district, they have to walk a quarter mile sometimes, so it's not an issue to us.
The only parking at that site is on the west side? Is there parking anywhere else?
There's west side, there's south side, yeah. There's,
On the south?
yeah.
So think about some of the current loading dock areas,
Right.
fully utilizing that. So this is a little bit different from a timing standpoint. So we've actually been engaged with Steve and his team, the individuals that will own the building, for several months as they have worked through all these issues, even like you see building plans that are attached within that packet. Because of the complexities of kind of essentially repurposing this building for their usage, they have done a lot of the due diligence already, so that when we're at this point now, they feel confident that now there won't be surprises, right? Where a lot of times when we're talking about projects like this and requesting assistance, we'll find a lot more surprises down the road. So as far as how the city's team, and Lon can, I guess, elaborate on this piece, a lot of what is being requested is to really recognize the fact that there's a lot of investment that needs to be made in this building in addition to the purchase price to really get it up to the level, food grade level almost in some areas, to support how this company's going to utilize it. We feel that's a high value to the community as it relates to this real estate that's sat almost empty for many years. So what will be requested, I think, on Thursday is actually a resolution directing staff then to dig into the finite details as far as the support that the city will provide to kind of make this project happen. Any other questions?
Steve, I had a quick question. How many of your employees at this point by percentage are residents of Marion? Do you know?
We have 3 employees, so it'd be, I guess, 10%. But 2 of them bought houses within the last 6 months as we were talking through this move. So we had 1 up until we decided to pull the trigger here.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate your interest in Marion, and we look forward to working with you.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, might as well, because then you don't have to stay if you don't want. And while Nick is here, we might as well go ahead and get number 1 out of the way. It's a resolution for support for Freund Vector's financial assistance application. The company is applying for assistance for another expansion. I think this will be the 4th one that they have approached us about help with. In this case, the city is not going to be providing direct financial assistance. All the assistance, the match for the state's investment, will be provided through the Medco holding company through a reduction in the cost of the property, which was the original concept behind the development of the Marion Enterprise Center. I would ask Nick to give you a bit more of a briefing about what they actually plan to do out there, because it's a pretty exciting project.
Yeah, so we have seen some conceptual renderings of this project. I think what we're most excited about is this will be the first project in what we call Tier 1 of the Marion Enterprise Center. So our park is divided into 3 tiers based on usage, and each of those tiers have various levels of design standards that are appropriate for those various usages. So really, I guess I'll call it the front of the park. The north side of the park is designed for Think about corporate headquarters, technology-type companies, and really that's what this is. So the company is proposing to build really a replacement of their laboratory space that's currently located on 44th Street to support, it's essentially their clients who are traveling here to test the development of and use of Freund Vector's equipment for their potential purchase. So the company really wants to put a kind of a better first impression out there for some of these global customers while expanding their R&D capabilities at the same time. The site will also position the company for future growth in that location as they see the need. So it's about, I think, as you see in the application to the state, it's about a $6.5 million project with significant amount of additional R&D expenses. We're just tickled to be able to support this project. So what you will be essentially supporting is the sponsorship of that application to the state. So the local municipality is who has to sponsor that. We can't sponsor that. However, there's no financial obligation being requested of the city. Just to get a little bit deeper into what Lon's talking about, how we facilitate this is we provide a forgivable loan at closing to offset what companies have to bring to closing in order to own the property. Once they actually complete the project, or I guess from a city standpoint, our interest is creating tax base. Once they create that tax base, we then forgive that loan. That becomes their incentive into the project, but we have lots of ways that we ensure that forgivable loan and that ground is protected because the intent of that park is to do projects, not to sell ground and watch it sit for many years. So that's how that will be facilitated. You'll see more details on the project itself as it's developed. The council will see the site development plan that has all the pretty renderings and things like that. But I guarantee you that this is a project that we're going to be very proud of as a community. It's going to be a really great piece of real estate in addition to what happens within it. Does anybody have any questions? Happy to answer.
Good? Nope. Okay. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Lon.
Do the photo while you're hot. Last item.
I guess that is my last one, isn't it?
That worked out well.
Actually, we have the one for AIS properties as well.
Do you want to go ahead and finish those up, or?
Sure. Essentially what we're doing is the city entered into an agreement with AIS Properties to provide assistance for the renovations and restoration of the Irwin's building. As you might recall, a lot of that was for ADA improvements to the building. They put in an elevator for modernization and historic preservation activities, but it's a different agreement in that there's 3 different participants. The way it was set up is we entered into an agreement with AIS, Medco, and the city. In essence, the AIS properties took the assignment of the rebate incentives, assigned them to Medco. Medco used them to capitalize a loan, and then now the TIF goes back to Medco. Medco makes the payments on the loan, but the company got the benefit of getting the cash up front to go towards the construction project. So they kind of stepped in as an intermediary, converted the TIF rebate stream to cash and provided the cash to the company. When we negotiated the agreement, we were going off of estimates of what those payments would actually be, and so we wrote the agreement around those estimates. Now that we've got everything done and we're in the real world, they're about $600 short on each payment, and so we just need to restructure it so that we're actually paying Medco what the payments actually turned out to be. The agreement was for $409,000. That $409,000 is not changing. We're just changing the payment schedule to make sure that they're not getting themselves in trouble with the bank.
Same pot of money.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the reason it was tabled the last time is because we weren't at the point yet where we had the language worked out with our attorneys to make sure that we were getting the payments covered, and we got that taken care of.
Same incentive, just different.
Just a different payment schedule. It's coming in a little bit faster.
Questions? Okay. Number 7.
And number 7, we just need to get an idea from the council of which one of those dates would work better. So just take a look at calendars.
I'm here for both, so it's good for me.
Question.
I don't, let's see. I'm here for the first one, but not the second.
I can look. Yeah, it could be spring break, but
Oh, maybe it's right after.
I have a council meeting on the 8th. Sorry, I won't be able to.
I would suggest you dress up.
Saying I don't?
Okay, March 8th or the 22nd?
You want to tally tonight?
You're not going to be here on the.
Yeah,
26th?
Tracy needs to be able to make arrangements with the photographer to come.
I think I'll be back by the 22nd.
I'm good for both.
I'll be here.
yeah, spring break's the week before.
It'll take them 2 weeks and
8th's my dad's birthday, but I'll be here anyway.
Yeah, I don't want to be here.
So I'm here.
We do it before the meeting like normal.
Generally, they'll try to get it out of the way before the meeting, 15 minutes ahead of time.
Either one works.
So, the 8th work?
Sure.
Okay.
Be here at 5.
All right. Back to Tom.
$5 o'clock, something like that.
I'm not in favor for this.
5 o'clock one on the 8th.
The first item started there is just a public hearing on Thursday for the sale of Gospel Light. Church requesting to purchase a portion of the 3rd Street south of 3rd Ave. We talked a little bit about this at the last meeting, so I really wasn't expecting to go through too much, but here's Marion Independence football field. You got 3rd Ave. It's this portion of property. If you recall, the gentleman spoke about potentially widening the access point. The only thing that I would,
I have a question, Tom. Have they made friends with the Marion Independent School District? There was a time when they wouldn't let them park in there for football games,
They still don't.
graduations.
They still don't.
They still don't?
No, they were. I had heard that they were supposed to this year.
Well, I mean, could we make that part of this agreement is my question. I mean, why, we're going to give away, it's a problem for Marion Independent. There any question about that?
That would be nice.
Yeah. Could we ask?
I'm assuming they'll be here on Thursday. I think making that point at the public hearing or at the time would probably be a good time.
Good for the visiting team to park over there.
Well, it is a problem down there.
That's the visitor side.
You just need more parking everywhere.
I know.
How do we determine the purchase price?
So this is an analysis that we do, and what we do is we find there's a city policy that's been written and establishes the value at 35% of the average assessed value on a per square footage basis for the property. So we look at the property around, and you can see the Gospel Light owns a couple of them, and there's a private ownership. We do the calculation, so they'll pay $2,821.67 for the alley based on that policy.
We charge 35% of the assessed value?
Yep.
Why is that? I mean, why isn't it 100% of the assessed value?
Well, going back to when it was determined, a lot of times it was alleyways in the backs of properties. This is a little bit different because it's right of way, and there could certainly be something different established, but we don't really do right of way very often, to be honest. Usually it's an alleyway. When we do alleyways, it's kind of a benefit to the city to get the property back on the tax rolls, and a lot of times if there's a lot of cost associated with it, folks don't really, it's not an alley, it's green space.
They use it anyway.
They use it anyway. We try to make it easy to get it back on the tax rolls. honestly, there is a lot of work that goes into this. For right away, this one's a little easier. But when we're doing the alleys, that is a substantial, and I'm not kidding you, a substantial time commitment for the return that we receive. It does get the properties back on the tax rolls, and I'm sure it pays off over about 130 years. But it is brutal for us. I know in the past there's been conversations about trying to vacate all the streets and alleyways. But legal, I mean, the mayor would understand the legal. When you have a 10-foot alley and you're selling 5 foot to adjacent property owners, and you may have 6 or 8 property owners involved. So,
I understand.
but anyway, back to this. That's how we establish the value currently per policy.
I mean, I'm not saying it. I mean, that there isn't a reason to discount it some, but 35% seems like a huge discount. I don't know, and it's just for something that I know that not currently on the tax roll, and we're going to put it on the tax roll. But it also greatly enhances their property value.
Church pay tax?
What's that?
Church doesn't.
Well,
pay.
in this case, there's not even, it won't even be on the tax roll.
It's true.
That's true. That's true. I mean, I'm not, I mean, I want them to have it and all that, but I don't know that. I think we have to look at our obligation to the citizens too, and
And in cases like this where you're getting rid of a road, then now Ryan doesn't have to maintain it anymore. We don't have to plow it anymore, so there are additional benefits to it. But in the case of a lot of the other properties, part of the reason why those values are usually low is that they're not generally pieces of property where you've got full use. Most of the time, even if we're vacating the property, there might be a utility easement, there's cable lines, there's stuff that's buried in the old alleys where people can't just go and use them. They can't build a garage over it or put a shed over it like you can regular property. So as far as the use of it goes, there's typically is some kind of a discount applied. Whether 65% is too steep, I can't say, but it's not as though it's just property they can do anything they want with. It generally comes with permanent restrictions.
There's a water easement across this roadway. Be required.
But if you were going to condemn that easement or condemn, if they owned it and you were going to condemn access across it or something, you'd be paying market value. If it's the reverse, no?
Yep. The city does not have a constitutional protection against takings in the way private property owners do.
You're not paying market value?
Your Honor, I think you're kind of not really comparing apples to apples when you do that.
Oh, good. I'm willing to be convinced.
If you're condemning, let's say in that scenario, you're condemning property that was already attached to existing property. You're condemning a strip of that property. That property would be much more valuable as it was part of the original parcel. Think of it like this. The property that you're trying to vacate, go try and find an arm's length buyer for that and what they'd be willing to buy. It's probably not a very attractive investment for a lot of people to want to buy that other than to the adjacent landowner.
Yeah.
So it's the idea that, I think the value of the land you'd be doing in the taking would be much higher than the land value.
I understand what you're saying, but here's what I'm saying. You're saying that we usually, our policy is 35% of market, 35% of assessed value. Assessed value is supposed to be the market value of that parcel. Whether it's useful to anybody or not useful to anybody, that's the market value of it. That's what an appraiser at the assessor's office determined is the value of it based on how useful it is to whoever and where it's located and all that stuff. So, I mean, we are asking for a lot less than what it's worth.
Just one slight correction. That's the market value of the adjoining properties. The adjoining properties would not come with things like water easements and those other use restrictions. So I would contend that the adjoining property next to an alley is going to be higher value than an alley that has those restrictions coming with it. The assessor, however, does not come in and specifically assess the alley parcel because it's city and therefore tax exempt, and so they never assign values to those. They probably could if we asked them. But in any event, this is something that's simply set by council policy. If there's a feeling in the council that we need to reevaluate that policy, it's just simply something that you as a group need to direct staff to do, and we'll do some research on it and come back and make recommendations for you.
Really,
We're just presenting it according to a long-standing practice.
No, I understand that. My main point is to make sure we're thinking about it.
Well, I would say,
Sometimes it's easy to say, well, that's the policy and it's been that way. We don't remember why it's that way, but it's that way for 50 years and that's just our policy. But sometimes it's good to review policies and think about them.
I would say the market value for that piece of parcel or that property, the road would be much, much higher for the church than that, because that's their access. So if the neighbor owned that property or owned that road, they're gonna pay way more money than $2,800 to purchase that because of the market value for that piece, because that's their only access back in there.
What's the advantage to the
That makes
church
sense.
to own that property?
Well,
The driveway.
I think if you look at this too, I think we
We're
talked about it.
maintaining it now, though. They
They've
still
actually
use it.
bought the two houses next to
Right.
the property, so, I mean,
They
they're,
what now?
they've bought the area in blue,
Foster's old house there?
so they've purchased this property, and what they want to do is expand the drive, make an ingress and egress, make it a little wider, more prominent, so you can see it. People can't find the
They
church.
said at the meeting, you weren't here, that they want to widen it and beautify it more.
And put up signage, right?
Hmm.
For the church on the,
We're still
on
talking
Third.
about signage.
Which now those two pieces of property come off the tax roll.
I'm sorry?
Those two pieces of property come off the tax roll.
Correct.
Mhm.
That's already, that's
already done.
Yeah, that's private transaction.
Okay, other questions on that or thoughts?
I'm assuming this doesn't come up very often.
We have alleys come up, but not,
Alleys, but not,
alleys more.
I understand alleys.
yeah.
Yeah,
Those don't have a lot of value to anybody. This one actually has some more value to them than it does an alley.
anybody else?
Do we have a concern about, in the future, this repeating itself at such a substantial reduction of, I mean, this is the time to address change to the future.
I don't know if it does, because there's probably 0 more opportunities to buy roads.
We've got
Probably
a lot
not
of
many.
we got a lot
But
of
actually, I mean,
Having a
Mike
lot.
just leaned over there. I mean, we've got roads in the central corridor that are likely going to be,
It's gonna be
that's
coming
true.
up.
That's
Yeah.
true.
they'll
That's
likely be a part
Right.
of a
Yeah.
development project, to be honest. But, I mean, it's so,
I think
I'm not
the-
looking for work to do. I got enough.
Oh.
But I understand.
I think the big thing is we do not maintain alleys, and I think they're a liability,
Mhm.
so I think that we sell them for what we can get for them and they're gone, but,
I agree with the alleys, but this is not an alley.
pardon me?
I said I agree with the alleys, but this is not an alley, and the ones coming up in the future are not alleys
Yeah,
either.
I know, and I disagree with this one for other reasons, but
Right, I hear you.
But is someone suggesting that we look at changing
like
the
that.
rate of calculation by which we charge
That's
from
my point.
35%? Right, so is there,
When we want to acquire something to
people
do
interested?
something, we're paying market or assessed plus. But yet, in this particular case here, it seems, again, to the average citizen understanding, how did we reverse this process? I think it warrants reviewing going forward, in my
So,
opinion.
A road different than an alley.
Absolutely. And I know that there's to be more to come.
I'm concerned that when Tom says it's taking so much of his time, to do this and not getting, reimbursed for that, really. So I would be for raising the amount.
I'm certainly interested in if it's worth it to us, particularly if we have more roadways coming up with bigger projects. I don't think people would scoff at paying 65% or whatever.
Or
whatever
market
strip.
value.
Right.
That's a lot of ground for $2,800.
For a road.
Yeah. I think it's a benefit to the city. I realize it will take some time on staff's part to put together probably a recommendation, but in the
Yeah.
long run, it seems like a boon to the city coffers.
Well, one thing we can do is at least look around and see what other cities are doing from a policy perspective. I mean, so
That's a great idea.
Yep.
And if this is a rare bird, if you're gonna tell me, yeah, this is once in a blue moon transaction, I'm gonna say not worth our time.
Yeah.
But when you talk about the central corridor, we know that's gonna have a lot of activity over the next decade.
Well, and I don't think we should
That means
discount,
this is
I don't
gonna
think we
become
should
a-
discredit it because it is once in a blue moon. I think we need to correct the problems as we address them for future council.
Again, if it happens just once every 20 years, Tom's got other things to do, so, but if we're gonna have
Right,
it,
but this is different than alleys.
I agree with that.
Yep.
Oh, I agree with that.
We can put some, we can do a little research on what other cities are doing from a policy perspective and.
Okay. Is that okay with everybody?
Yep.
I think it's great.
Yep.
I think it's worthwhile. Thank you. Number 6.
Number 6 is resolution approving the final plat of Graybaugh Second Edition. Again, this is one we talked about. It's the final plat. It's an ugly final plat, just to be honest. It's not. It's been split off a few times in the past, but never actually final platted. This was on the agenda last time and pushed to this meeting just because we were waiting for some signatures from additional family members. So I don't know if anybody had any particular questions about it, but that's kind of the situation.
Is there a development plan for it?
There's so they're transferring the property for a development interest, but we've not been apprised of what that development interest is. So just desiring the process. Yep.
I've asked the agent a couple times and they won't tell me either, so.
Been pretty tight.
What was that? What number are you
That
on?
was 5.
We did 5.
That was 5.
I thought
Okay.
we were talking 6, that's where I got
Yeah.
lost.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Then I looked at the map and I
Yeah.
go, oh,
My apologies.
That's okay. It wasn't starred, so. all
yeah.
right. Okay.
Item 6 and 7, I think, are both starred, and this is a preliminary and final plat for Prestwick Place. The photo on this is the location, 29th Avenue, 44th. Prestwick addition is this entire area. The original preliminary plat took the area in red and divided it into 4 lots and put a cul-de-sac off 29th Avenue. The desire is to revise the preliminary plat to make 2 large lots off 29th Avenue, accessed by a private drive that would come in here and provide access to the 2 properties. So this is the revised preliminary, which is item number 6, and item number 7 is the final plat. This is actually a fairly good thing. We're not creating a public improvement. There's no cul-de-sac. You'll just have one private drive that'll come in and service 2 lots. There is an easement that'll be required to be maintained through the property to provide access back here to a detention pond. So really, it's a revised preliminary plat and then a final plat to support that revision.
What's the plan for the 2 lots? Is that
Single-family residential.
single-family
Yep.
residential?
So just be large lots.
Yeah, nice lots.
Wow.
Well, if you think that cul-de-sac's fairly expensive for 4 lots. So, and plus then we have to maintain it. So there's a cost benefit.
Big homes down there.
Questions? That was 6 and 7 together? Okay.
Yep.
8.
8, 9, and 10 are all related. What you have is we've received a request to allow for the plat of survey, a waiver of the subdivision regs to plat property for the YMCA via plat of survey. The property is identified in the darker lines here. This is Winslow Road. As it comes down, and this would be Tower Terrace. So if you're driving out or coming in from Hunters on Winslow, the new curvature here, the YMCA is proposing to buy this large lot in this vicinity. I believe it's about 20 or 12 acres, almost 13 acres. This lot was not contemplated as part of the preliminary plat. So generally what would happen, there'd be a preliminary plat that would show the development, and then a final plat would come in and support the preliminary. The desirability to transfer the property, we've received letters from the developer as well as the YMCA wanting to close on the property. There's generally it's a waiver of the subdivision regs. So it just takes us a little time to figure out what needs to occur, because it's not a part of we don't get a memorandum of agreement. There's not a final plat. It's just a little, sometimes costs can get passed along to the potential buyer and not know it, because in a final plat, we go through a much more rigorous process to develop the memorandum of agreement where all the fees are established and all the payments are made. We've done that. There's been an agreement that the payment for Winslow Road, there's a $45,000 development fee associated with the construction of Winslow Road that we'll need to obtain, and we want that as soon as possible. So we're asking that be paid as a part of the transfer of property. There will be an additional fee of $300, and I believe our stormwater management $350. About $350 an acre, so there'll be a couple $1,000 also associated with when the property does final plat. We will get a final plat. The YMCA will be required to final plat it before they get a building permit. So that will occur. Anyway, the waivers come through. We've kind of processed it to understand what payments are due. We've relayed that to the owners, and they've requested to proceed in this manner. So the council would have to provide for the waiver and allow for the plat of survey to be approved.
What does staff recommend?
I'm sorry?
What does staff recommend for this?
That's an interesting question. It's a waiver of our subdivision regs. We don't like to do it. Is it going to, it's...
What Tom's not willing to tell you is that the planning department never willingly recommends waiving the subdivision requirements.
Does it cause more work for the planning department in the future because this was waived?
It can. We've done the background in this one in particular case because, this is a community project. So we know what the fees are. We want to make sure that the fees are paid as soon as the property is split and transferred. So we went ahead and done that, and we know that that's going to be approved. Doing it per the codes it would take another month and a half, and I think they're just, as you can see in the letters I think I submitted, there's a request by both parties to proceed. So from an extra work perspective, we would generally do the work associated with the final plat at the time of the final plat. So there's no public improvements associated with this as a final plat. The right-of-way for Winslow has been dedicated already, so that takes away some of the items that we specifically identify in a memorandum of agreement. Plus, if we're going to we'll get the final plat at the time the building permit is, prior to the building permit being issued. So there'll be agreements in place at that time to ensure that the sidewalks and everything are constructed. That's generally also included in a memorandum at the time of a final plat. So
it's not out of the realm for the city to do this, where we'll waive the subdivision requirements and allow a plat of survey for a transfer of property. But usually it's from developer to developer, or it's a developer buying parcels over time for tax purposes because of the seller. Where we get concerned is when a property is being transferred from a developer or a development company who's familiar with what the requirements are, they know what the fees are, they know what the obligations are, to an entity that doesn't typically do development. And that's the case with this one. So the staff has put in some extra time up front to make sure that as the party buying the property, the YMCA does have a clear understanding of what the expectations are going to be, and to make sure that some of those outstanding fees, like the connection fees, are collected at the time that the property is actually transferred. If it was a case I'd have more concerns about it if the YMCA was not going to be the ultimate user. If it was a case like what we've encountered over there on East Robbins Road with that second sidewalk for that addition that Midwest Homes put in, where the second or third property owners don't necessarily know that it's their obligation to maintain that sidewalk. In this case, the YMCA is ultimately going to be the one that's going to have the property for, probably the next 100 years, so I have fewer concerns about that.
You will see us do this, and I just want to be clear so that 3 months from now when I bring one forward, there's not a lot of questions. But if we have a 50-lot subdivision and we have it preliminary platted, sometimes the developer will say, hey, I'm going to sell off 20 lots from Integrity to Skogman, and then Skogman will final plat it consistent with the preliminary, and they just want to transfer. That's generally when we'll say that's fine, because everything's kind of established. You're splitting property based on a preliminary plat. This is just a new lot in a preliminary. So, I think everybody's aware of the project, and the fact that the public improvements have been completed helps a lot with a comfort level. So,
from a precedent standpoint, does this put us in a bad spot?
This is
or
a pretty rare.
Unique enough?
Yeah, this is a pretty rare occurrence. You don't often see parcels of this scale that are going to be transferred for anything other than development as single-family lots. If this was somebody coming in that was, Fairway or somebody like that, most of the time they're not going to want to do it until there's a preliminary plat, because they're going to want to know what the neighbors' layouts and everything are going to be. It's a pretty unique project.
And a big reason why you would normally not allow a plat of survey is because you don't want somebody to keep getting around platting regulations by plat of surveying one big parcel, and then they do another plat of survey, another plat of survey. But this is not the case here.
I would just like to see the Y be a little further along than where we're supposed to be at this point, to have the sense of we're there. Are we there? How far is the Y behind, or are they behind at all from bringing us to where we should be at this point, instead of always asking for these exceptions, and not just the Y, but the current owners? I've seen this a few times now come up where they're asking for the exception to move forward without that plat. In my short time, I'm seeing it more and more frequently. Can anybody answer that?
I don't have an update on the why.
That's where I'm a little concerned, is I feel we're there, but yet here's where the exception comes into play, where we have this land that could be an island that is not up to where we need it to be for us to continue the build out in that area. Am I on track with that? Or am I way off base? We see that on all these subdivisions. Every time somebody wants to go in and cut a section out, start getting ahead of the schedule, and they're asking for these exceptions, and those exceptions are so far we haven't gotten caught with that process of it being a negative situation. But again, there's a few things that just kind of keep eating at me here as to making some of these exceptions. But what's the staff's thoughts on that?
I would say that if there was more of a public right-of-way and public improvements as a part of it, we would probably have a much different opinion. But since the roadway is in, I don't know, is the sidewalk in on the south side? I don't even know.
I have a question,
so
Tom.
The sidewalk's even in on this one, so
it is.
There's a lot more comfort in knowing that the public improvements are completed and that there's no.
So worst case scenario, we would just have a piece of land that hasn't been developed because we haven't gotten to, or they haven't gotten to that point of the build out as what we were under the impression of.
Yep, that's correct.
It could help them raise money and things of that nature.
Yep.
I have a question, Tom. Current roadway off to the east there, does that engulf that down at the bottom of that? Until Tower Terrace Bridge is done, that roadway has to stay open, I think.
Correct. The plat of survey is outside. That line is the west. It's the west right-of-way line of the existing roadway. So that will have to be at some point vacated and for public use in the future.
You just further maroon about 10,000 people live in Hunter's Ridge.
I know these plans are popular out there.
Well, I mean, you got 2 roadways.
There's a substantial improvement that needs to occur before that happens. The bridge.
So where are we on this?
Well, I was just curious. Randy asked a question. If there's an update, do you have an update on the why?
I was just looking to see what my most recent one was, and there's nothing in there that really is much of an update for the council.
My understanding
I'll
is
reach out to him and
they
see.
plan to break ground in 2018.
But how much?
That's what I've been
I'm sure this will be, I'm going to communicate this with Susan, who's going to communicate it to the Y. Maybe that's something on Thursday they can
An
provide.
update? I had reached out to someone at the Y asking about an update for council, and I never got a response back. So I was just, it'd be nice. It'd be nice to get an update on what's going on with it.
Yeah, I had gotten an email from Zach Bohannon today, and I was checking to see if it was related to overall update for the project, but it was pretty specific, so I'll reach out to him and see if we can have somebody here on Thursday and provide an overall update.
That'd be great.
And maybe how this will help them, if it will.
That's
What the benefit is. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay. Anything else? Other questions about this or any other item on the agenda?
Well, it's not an agenda item. I have one quick
Go ahead.
question.
Yep.
The law office, it looks like the stuff for the asbestos abatement's gone. Are they finished with that then?
The asbestos abatement is done. I did send an email earlier this week to get an update on the construction schedule. The last time that I had gotten an update from him, demo was supposed to start this week.
Oh. I've had a couple people this week ask me about, or I should say last week, ask me about that, so. Thanks.
Okay. Anything else?
Go Patriots.
Thank you, everyone. Good meeting.